The meeting come back to order, and I may remind everybody that if you have your cell phone, please silence them at this time. Now we're into the workshop portion of this meeting. We've completed the public hearing. And first on the list of presenters is our probate judge, the Honorable Thomas C. Bordeaux, Jr. Mr. Judge, you have 5 minutes, and that does not include the half hour of questions that you will get.
And it does have some figures.
If you would, Judge, if you just pull those mics up.
Thank you very much. I will be brief. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I appreciate your time. When I've served in the legislature and on city council, frankly, the job I hated, part of the job I hated worse was what y'all are doing today, listening to members of the public come before you and tell you about worthy projects, needy projects, projects that would make the community better. And you knew the simple truth that there's not enough money to go around for everybody, even the needy projects. And frankly, I realize probate court, you probably not had 2 calls all years about what probate court needs and why you need to fund them better. But the fact is that probate court is charged by the Constitution and by the statutory law of Georgia to perform certain tasks, whether it be with marriage license, gun permits, probate proceedings, guardianship proceedings, mental health committal hearings, a dozen things I never even knew about. We're charged with doing that. We're required to do that. It is not optional. It is not discretionary. We must do it. And frankly, y'all are the source of funding for that. Unless you fund us, we cannot do it. And that's not optional. It has to be done. I ask y'all to meet your responsibility. I will tell you, I used to think that of probate court as this quiet, sleepy court where when Andy of Mayberry retired as sheriff, he could probably get a part-time job as the judge there because it was supposed to be quiet and sleepy. Come to find out, it ain't that way at all. The fact is, probate court of Chatham County was quiet and sleepy by design because the chief clerk of that court for a number of years wanted it to be quiet, did not want oversight, did not want questions being raised, did not want adequate staff to look and see what she was doing. I'll show you what she was doing. Kim Burge, the chief clerk of court for a number of years, stole over $1 million from women, orphans, widows, widowers, and she's still in prison, and she's going to go back. Well, she may be prosecuted again. We're still paying off. The county's still paying off. Other people are still paying off on her. And that's what happens when there is not sufficient oversight. That's what happens when there's not sufficient space, when there's not sufficient personnel, sufficient funding. We've got to have it. We have a hearing room, not even frankly called a courtroom, that's not wide enough to have the 2 lawyer tables sit side by side. You have to have one ahead of the other like this. If you have, probate court often has more than just 2 parties at the hearing. If you're the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th member of the family there for the hearing, you sit on a pew and work off of your lap rather than with lawyer or not lawyer. It's not adequate to do the job. I never dreamed I would need a law clerk to help me as probate court judge. Fact is, I'm the only judge in town who doesn't have one that has this type of court. I cannot do it. I simply cannot do my job without having a law clerk, senior, whatever they're called now, but I have to have it. I asked for it for years. I cannot do my job without having someone to help me do the research, help me do the drafting. It's got to be done. I will yield whatever other time the council, the commission will give me to Ms. Williamson, and she can give you some specifics, unless y'all have any questions of me, of course. Yes, sir. Or, yes.
You have a question before he completes his presentation? Okay. Are you,
I yield to Ms. Williamson, if I may,
Okay.
please.
you have it up to probate judge? Okay.
Good morning. You should have a handout for me. If you could go to page 4, I'm going to start there. I know it's backwards, but I just want you, I'm going to follow up on what the judge is saying. I'm here to talk about the safety and security of probate court. We're making one request today, and that's for a staff attorney. And how does that relate to safety and security? During the period of unaccountability, masterminded by Kim Burge, over 11,000 guardianships and conservatorships were created in probate court. Do you have the handout? Page 4? Are you with me? Tell me you do have a page 4. You don't have the handout? It's on the back. If you flip it over, it should be on the back. Okay. There were over 11,000 guardianships and conservatorships that were created in probate court. The vast majority, 90% of those cases, there's no evidence of any reports received or required, which means that those most vulnerable citizens in Chatham County are not being protected by probate court because they've had insufficient staff to do their job. Under Georgia law, the probate court shall carefully examine each return filed by a guardian or a conservator, and the court shall hold a hearing and take other action as the court deems appropriate. In speaking with local attorneys and our current staff that have been around, it's never been done. So we are learning, unfortunately, from third parties of minor wards who are in de facto custody, in possession of adults that may or may not be family members, deceased, or returned to their natural parents without the blessing of the court. And we have the responsibility to make sure that we go through a process to make sure parents are worthy of being returned to their kids. So safety and security at probate court is going to be helped by the addition of a staff attorney who can assist in holding these guardians and conservators responsible and reviewing very complicated returns that we're not receiving and that we should be going over. If you will go to page 1, I have set forth the salary and the total cost for the county of $103,034 for a staff attorney. I also want you to know and understand that Chatham County is completely out of whack with other counties of like size and actually of smaller size. And I have provided to you the 5 counties that are like size. One of them, Cherokee County, is an apple and we're an orange. They have less than half the filing that we have. Their demographics don't match us. Chatham County has the highest percentage of citizens over the age of 65, and that's only going to grow. So the probate side, if we're suffering now and if our people are suffering now, they're going to only suffer worse now and in the future. Also, we have one of the highest poverty rates, which affects our mental health and orders to apprehend, that's where people come in, 2 family members come in and say a family member's out of control, they've lost control of their mind, we need them picked up and taken to Georgia Regional. We are about to double in the number of ordered to apprehend that we're processing annually. And we don't have the staff to sufficiently cover the job we have to do. So I want you to know, to note the filing numbers, the demographics, and we have a staff of 15, which even if you approve what has been recommended, we're still a staff of 15. We're not getting any additional staff under the current recommendations, compared to Clayton with 17 full-time and 6 part-time, Henry with 19 full-time, 3 part-time, with Forsyth, 26 full-time, 2 bailiffs full-time. Richmond County, 11 full-time with about 100,000 less people in the county. So the other thing you need to notice is that there is not one other single county that does not have a staff attorney or a paralegal. Not one. We're the only one. If you will look at page 3, I just want you to know that we're not making requests for denials and reinstating certain budget requests. One is for space and refurbishing, and I want you to know and understand that probate court is by design, by current structure, an unsafe place, and that somebody's going to get hurt. We have a court embedded in the middle of a busy court. We have no way out if somebody loses control, and we're inviting in people with mental health issues that are likely to lose control. And the other is not so, well, the Eagle program, Tyler sold us a program in 2015 that was obsolete. And we're battling because we have a program that cannot be used online, cannot be moved forward in the 21st century, no longer supported by Tyler. We are negotiating to get that replaced at no cost to Chatham County, but currently they're requesting $31,500. This year it needs to happen one way or the other, so we may be back asking for that money. Today, we are asking for a staff attorney to begin coming in line with other counties of smaller size than our county to be a safe place for people who are our most vulnerable citizens. Thank you.
We have a question from Commissioner Jones of the 6th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Jones?
Mr. Chairman, I go ahead and yield my question. She answered it when she did her conversation. I appreciate it, sir.
Commissioner Odell from the 5th District.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just have a question of county manager. The new program that they're looking at, is it going to fall in line with the other program that we've been talking about with the CRM and the finance and the other, that linking all that together? They're all, okay, that was it.
Any further questions? Commissioner Holmes of the 2nd.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Good morning, Mr. Tom.
Good morning, sir.
The loophole that was used was the problem we had over there. Have you found a system how to defend against that?
We've done a number of things. From day one, practically speaking, one thing we did do was to get a position of a cashier. Before, there was not a cashier, and every assistant clerk was responsible for, was charged with, permitted to bring in money, including cash, account for that supposedly at the end of the day, and it was 6 or 7, whatever it was, different people handling cash and no central accountability. We have fixed that. In a sense, it was a loophole. In a sense, it was just not having enough and the right people to look over the shoulder. I don't think Kim Burge ever, she didn't want to be fully staffed. She didn't want to hire the best people she could possibly get at the time, to be asking, well, what's happening here? Why is that guy coming in here and giving you checks?
Who was her supervisor and who should have been looking over her?
My understanding is that the chief clerk reports directly to the judge. I will tell you that during my first 6 months in office, when Nat Rackett was the chief clerk and was alive, I asked him, I said, how would I know if you were doing the same thing that Kim Burge was doing? It's not structural. It's simply a matter of having enough people there, enough documents read by someone other than one person, the chief clerk or a deputy clerk. It wasn't one single loophole. It was a matter of just oversight by true oversight by whoever's next on the totem pole, but also other people, peers or people even immediately before you, looking and seeing and watching. What, this is, forgive me for diverting here for just a moment, but in one of the cases where money was misappropriated, stolen by Kim Burge, I was going through one of the statements from the bank on one of the accounts she opened. And there is a notice from the bank, one of those pre-printed notices that you get on the bank statements, that talks about you may not use this account for transactions that are subject to the National Gambling Act or something to this effect, where she was evidently using funds from that, trying to transfer them to pay a gambling debt. No one was going through and overseeing that. No one was, there was no personnel in the office who did that job. And Ms. Williamson, you can provide some other information about that.
I want y'all to understand that the probate court was using paper accounting until 2016, paper. So Kim Burge should have been and was actually audited by the county. That's the accountability. But a paper accounting system is very difficult to audit, number one. Number two, we don't have custodial accounts. We don't make them available.
Okay.
So we do not keep money in trust. There has to be an attorney or some other outside fund. We do not touch money. Number three, she did not she did not have multiple hands on every task, and now we do, and we're audited every which way we look frequently.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
We got Commissioner Lockett of the 3rd.
Judge,
Yes, sir.
if I am hearing correctly, more room is one of your needs, and another one is personnel.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Those are your biggest problems.
Those are the most immediate problems, and once we have more space, we can configure it in a way that meets with ACCG guidelines or requirements for space in courts and safety in courts. And the irony is this, sir. There is the space in the courthouse. It is immediately adjacent to the probate court. It is being occupied now by folks who are not required by law to be in the courthouse. We are required to be in the courthouse. Over a year and a half ago, we even had architectural drawings prepared in conjunction with the county for the allocation of the space. And the only space we've been given is basically a closet to put the weapons carry license folks in, and we appreciate that, and it's helped. And one other thing I would mention, last year I believe it was Commissioner Stone and at least one of the other commissioners suggested that, well, maybe y'all need to automate more, whatever the computerize more, I guess is the modern term. We took that to heart. We followed the lead of the commission, the direction of the commission. We now, for weapons carry license, we have, I think, 3, whether you call them portholes or cubicles, kiosks, for the computer, where people come in and they fill out their information, and it's done much more efficiently. It reduces the amount of personnel cost. But we've done that. That could have been done, frankly, years ago. And now we've done it because we've got to bring this court into the modern age because it's required by the Constitution. It's required by the statutory law to get the job done. I'm sworn to get the job done, and that's why I come to y'all and ask y'all, frankly, to meet y'all's responsibility to fund us and give us the space that's required. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Now,
Chairman.
I want to just make a statement about the probate judge and the probate court, and this is not intended for the current judge. I too serve as a constitutional officer in this county. I'm chairman and CEO of this county. I'm the sole signer of checks. Now, if I was to have the kind of theft that took place over there involving Lee Smith, I would expect at least I would be admonished, perhaps horned and everything else by the media. The probate judge is elected and is responsible for that office. Now, all this stuff took place under Kim Birch. I understand that. The probate judge at that time, I've not seen one iota, not even a drop of ink, written about that judge should have been held at least responsible for what went on in that probate court. Now, giving somebody else carte blanche authority to execute your office that you are elected to is unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. And I understand the judge is retired, and I wish him well. I'm just speaking as an elected person. I've served as a constitutional officer at the state level and at the county level. And I just think that when it's portrayed as if all the problems would be solved if it was just more money, I just think there have to be more oversight, more accountability. Now, I want to just give you an example. If you look at the 17-18 budget, the court was funded at $557,557. And then in the 18-19 budget, it was funded at $652,797. Okay? Now, what's being proposed for 1920, for the 1920 fiscal year, is $700,059, $374. $759,374. Now, if you were to look at that, starting with the 55557 number, that is a 37% increase. A 37% increase in less than 3 years, or 3 years. Okay? So we've increased the budget under the current probate judge, since he took office, by 37%. That's just a fact. You can do the math. It's $201,817, and it's just a simple math from the $557,557 versus the $759,000 that's being proposed, $374. Just that's $201,817. Now, and the reason I say that, that's a massive increase, 37%. I'm not suggesting that it answers all the problem. I think the probate judge office need more space. We're going to look at doing something about that long term. We've taken 3 temporary positions and made them permanent. We'll look further at the needs over there, and I suggest to you that the fund will continue to go up until that office is properly sized and everything else. But I'm going to speak for what I refer to as the absent majority, since no one came up here to talk about the food. Not the silent majority, the absent majority. Because I know folk who are out there, they're not at this hearing, but they don't want to pay a dime more in taxes to fund county government, be it the probate office, be it the DA's office, be it the county commissioners. That's what I hear when I'm out and about, be it at Walmart, Home Depot, Kroger's, or Publix, wherever I go. That's what people say to me. I hope you don't plan to increase my taxes. I hope you don't plan to increase the millage rate. And sometimes they say, like that other body, and I'm not going to cite that. They've already adopted their budget, and I'm not going to go there. But I'm just telling you what the public is saying. The absent majority is saying, please don't increase my taxes. And I say to my members of the county commission, if you're not hearing them, I'm hearing them, and I don't even have to run for re-election. But I have to pay taxes. And we're going to address the issues with the probate court. Now, I looked at the same, and our assistant county manager can tell you this. I had her to do a research of all the counties of comparable sizes, 2 years ago, to look at their staffing level, to look at their funding level. The other thing, too, some probate judges do things that this probate judge does not do in other counties. But they all do what's mandated by state law. And so we are keenly aware of what the other counties are funding. We are keenly aware of their staffing level. And so we don't do this in a void. It's just going to have to be incremental steps in order to address all the issues that was left by a non-performing probate judge in previous years to get it where it needs to be. Now, I'm not being negative to any staff over there, because I think there are people in that office who've been there for a long time, who get up every morning, go to work, and do the very best job they can. And I know that, and I admire that and respect that. I just wanted to put that for the record so people would acknowledge that we are not sitting here and have made no increases in the probate judge's staff or salary or anything else. That since this judge has come on, we've added over $200,000 to the office based on his request and his plea for help. So we're trying to help you, Judge, and we'll continue to try to help you. Commissioner Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question that's sort of bothering me. We've set the millage, and
We have proposed the millage. Until we vote on it, we have not officially set it.
all right, so, but we've proposed a millage rate, and we're going to hear from 5 organizations today that are requesting additional funding. And so, I mean, I guess my question is, are we putting the cart before the horse here? Should we have heard from them before we set budget in the millage?
Let me ask you this, Commissioner Stone. Would you be willing to vote to increase the millage?
I would have to see what the numbers are, but I'm just asking the question of, you know, if we decide collectively that either the probate court or the district attorney or the public defender or the Board of Elections or the juvenile court needs more money, I mean, what do we do at this point?
Well,
I mean, I guess that's my question.
Well, the question is, that until you officially set the millage rate, you haven't really adopted. But there are 2 things you can do. But one you can't do, you can't spend down your reserve without being in violation of your own charter, which requires a 3-month reserve.
I understand that.
You could pull money from your capital fund, which you've got earmarked to address issues as they come up, and also expenditures that you have voted to approve. You could pull money from there. The other, you could pull money from any other department that you so wish and transfer it to any other department that you so wish. You have that option. And really, in the absence of not increasing the millage, because I can tell you right now, as chair, I have another year and a half, and I have no intentions of increasing the millage with the exception of an emergency.
And I concur. I'm just asking the question of if we deem as collectively that there needs to be more money appropriated for these organizations, where will the money come from?
I just outlined, the only place you can take it from is your capital funding. You can't take it from reserve without being in violation of your own law. Secondly, you can transfer it from departments, other departments. Or you can even reduce headcounts in other departments to generate money. You can freeze unfilled positions in various departments to arrive at the funds. But those are your only options. Do you have any other, Mr. Manager?
Well, may I make a request then? I mean, it seems to me in years past that we've heard from all of these entities prior to the budget being set. So I'm concerned of what I'm hearing at this later date. I guess that's it in a nutshell.
No, I think that everyone who's on this list have presented their argument to staff.
But I'm talking about to us.
No, to staff. And And before we go forward and finalize a budget, they're presenting the argument to us. And I think there will be some who will present a winning argument where you might deem it necessary that you take money from your capital fund or some other fund to fund a position here and there. I suspect that that might happen between now and the 28th. But as far as a wholesale change, I don't see it. If you were to fund every request that's needed or that's requested, you would be contemplating, you certainly couldn't adopt the rollback rate in the special service district, which I'm going to vote that we adopt. And then we've got increase in the budget, as stated in my statement when we opened up the public hearing, that allows for a modest increase in every department and modest increase in performance pay for county employees. And if you look at the special service district, even with the rollback rate, it supports what I refer to as adequate funding for our police department. We made the statement that we wanted them to be the best paid department in the county, and they are. They're only exception to one state agency that pays more than what we are paying police officers because we think they take a tremendous risk, and we wanted to let them know that we understood that and wanted to reward them. Now, that's pretty much it as far as the budget is concerned. But now, when you got a budget of $200 million, you can decide whether or not this department needs 6 people versus 5. They haven't filled the 5th position. Do we want to put that at the probate office, or do we want to put it in some other areas? Those are decisions that you can make within the confound of a balanced recommendation from staff.
I was just curious of how this would work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And with the staff recommending the 4.99 rate in the special service district versus the commission recommending a 4.91, we simply plan to fund less in our capital equipment replacement budget for this year. And so we'll look at growth next year, and maybe we can fund more equipment next year. And in the event that you have an emergency, a catastrophic storm or something that comes through here, all bets are off, because you'll have to do whatever it takes to restore the county and its functional departments. And that's one of the reasons that we went from a 2-month to a 3-month reserve to give us that $30-some million cushion to help us address emergencies. But you can't spend that to fund operational needs.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is the Honorable Meg Heap, District Attorney.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all very much for allowing me this time to come and speak before you today. Hopefully all of y'all received the memo that I said explaining the critical needs of the District Attorney's Office. When we prepare a budget each year and we go before the executive board, we were told by the county manager, put everything you need in there that is critical, and we did, and we do so. I realize that you, listening here, that y'all have a lot of people coming before you and you have an entire budget that you need to approve. I am only asking for a prosecution team. It's scaling down. It's still, hopefully, as you stated earlier, Mr. Scott, Chairman Scott, of incrementally fulfilling this over the years, of a prosecutor and a legal secretary. I met with Chairman Scott some time ago expressing the concerns I have for my office. And you had stated to me, one of your main goals is the number of inmates that are at the jail, because you realize a lot of money is spent to house, to feed those individuals. And so my team sat down and we tried to figure out, and one of the first things I did, I called the sheriff and I said, Sheriff, you've got people at your jail. What is the number one charge that they are there for the most amount of inmates? And he told me aggravated assault and domestic violence. Currently, the way our Superior Court judges set up our system, we have 6 Superior Court judges. 2 are assigned for the Major Crimes Division. They handle your murders, your armed robberies, your sexual assaults. The 4 other judges, called the Other Felony Division, they handle our aggravated assaults, domestic violence. They handle my burglaries, my shopliftings, my robberies. And I have 2 prosecutors who are special victims that are assigned to domestic violence. They are specialized in that area. Because the nature of the crime, it takes someone who is very passionate about it and very well-trained, and they do constant training with law enforcement. Right now, I have 2 prosecutors handling 2 judges. So at any given day, you have 2 courtrooms, and judges have their courts. We do not get to design when they have court. They may be going on at the same time. You may have 2 trial dockets at the same time. So Sarah Doan is one of my prosecutors. She could be in front of Judge Walmsley and Judge Friesman at the same time. They're both scheduled for trial. She is told which one, and by law, it goes to the oldest one. So let's say she goes and she has to try the case in front of Judge Walmsley. That means her case in front of Judge Friesman is going to be continued. And one of the things I did as to that is I looked at numbers. And I said, I asked the sheriff, he said approximately $71 a day to house someone at the jail. And if we had to continue one of those cases off the trial docket and they're in jail, and keep in mind that right now, currently in my office, I have 21,000 cases. We increased from last year. It was 18,000 last year. It is 21,000 this year. So right now, they are scheduling trial dockets out 4 months. So let's say if a case was continued, a guy was in jail, an inmate was in jail, out 4 months, it would cost $8,500 for that continuance of 4 months. We added this up. What I would like to do, I'm asking for 1 more prosecutor. If I do, I can reorganize it and put 3 prosecutors in each of the other felony division Superior Court judges. I know that's a lot, but what I figured is this 1 prosecutor in each one will handle the aggravated assaults and the domestic violence jail cases. So we can streamline them. Instead of covering 2 courtrooms, you have 1, and you can process these cases. And ultimately, either they go to prison, they're probated, or they, whatever happens to the case, they are out of it. That's my hope in addressing the chairman's issue. One of the other issues that I wanted to bring to light are body-worn cameras. This is something that has now come to light, and all law enforcement use them. Currently in my office, we have 197,000 hours of body-worn camera, and that is only from the Savannah Police Department. We review those. The officer walks around with that body cam. It's downloaded into a cloud. We pull it down in our office. We're the ones who have to review those, and it's very critical. Many times, and I'll give you an example. Diane McLeod, my juvenile chief over at juvenile court, reviewed a body cam. The police report only listed 1 witness. In the body cam, she saw an officer chasing this individual, this juvenile that was arrested. And what I said, Diane, did it make a difference? Because yeah, number 1, I didn't know you could have chickens in the city. When she watched it, that's what she saw. But she also saw on that body cam 3 witnesses to the crime that were never mentioned in the police report. She went and got an investigator, and we found those witnesses. So a case that is maybe like this now is strengthened. In addition to that, by law, if we see things on the body cam that we are deemed by law, it's called Brady. That means there's something that may assist the public defender or assist the defendant in his case. We, by law, have to turn that over. So I have 2 people in my office that spend 40% of their day reviewing body cams. And now we have created a new police department. With that, I believe, is why we have seen the increase of 3,000 cases. And those cases come to my office. I have to process them in any way I can. I understand we're now giving them body cams. I think it's a wonderful idea. But on top of that, someone is going to have to review it, and it is in our office where we have to review those body cams. I know with the increase that we have given employees to assist, but what my concern is that this increase is putting another level of a burden on my prosecutors. I would ask y'all also to look to I have a lot of programs in my office to try to divert cases from being prosecuted. The accountability courts, whether it's drug court, if you have a drug problem, perhaps we can get you in that so you don't come back into the jail. So we can keep you on your, if you're in mental health court, keep you on your medicine so that the jail isn't having to handle these individuals. And we also have veterans court. We have a DUI court as well, and we are fully invested in those programs. I would like to mention to you is our pretrial diversion program. We have it both in misdemeanors and felonies. It is for non-youth, it is for youthful nonviolent offenders. The inception of the program was in 2013. And with that program, this is misdemeanors I'm talking about, not felonies. So you come in, and I've got a kid who's never been arrested before and made a stupid mistake and's got a theft by shoplifting. So we look at the case, we sit down with the young man, the young woman, and say, okay, we want you to go through the pretrial diversion program. We tell them they have to get a job. We tell them they have community service, and we also tell them you've got to pay a fee. And I'd asked before, I said, why the fee? It's just because if they pay the fee from the job, they're invested. The people who complete that program have over a 90% success rate. We run their GCICs every year. They have not reoffended. In addition to that, that fee goes into the general fund for Chatham County. By statute, I do not receive a dime. It goes back to you. And as of this date, it's over $800,000, which we have collected and has gone back into. These are the types of programs that I would continue, and I would like to continue to use, to look for ways to keep people and divert them from the criminal justice system. I would like this prosecutor, I think the prosecutor and her administrative assistant or his administrative assistant could help us process these cases and to get them out of the jail, which is a concern, but also for me as a concern is to make sure that justice is done for the victims that I represent. And I thank you for giving me this time to speak, and I would welcome any questions you have.
Questions? Commissioner Stone of the first.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your presentation. So you've offered, by this one additional prosecutor, an opportunity to recognize savings through the pretrial, and what was the other?
The pretrial diversion program, the accountability courts. We also have Intercept, which is another program associated with my office, is reaching children 12 to 25 with gunshot wounds, intentional injuries, that we reach out to the hospital to hopefully keep them from becoming involved in either a homicide or being a victim of murder themselves. Did that answer your question? Did I answer that or no? I'm sorry.
I guess in doing a lot of research with the mentally ill in the jails and understanding what it costs to house someone in the jail, I'm very concerned about that. But equally as important is that if someone's, for a misdemeanor, sits in jail for more than 30 days, they lose Medicaid, Medicare, veterans benefits, and so that then falls on the taxpayer.
So I know by statute, misdemeanors, that bond is automatically set. I have a prosecutor who addresses the accountability courts, both in Superior Court and in State Court and Recorder's Court. Because our hope is, if they're in there and they have a mental illness, we need to get them where they need to be. We have devoted somebody to the accountability courts, and she is now hoping to address and get into the state courts as well for the misdemeanors. Because I agree with you, if they need to be somewhere else and they need to get their medicines, the jail is not the place to hold them.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm very proud that we're doing this diversion center, but I just want some clarification on what you think that this additional staff member could save us as far as monetary expenses at the jail.
And so just to make sure I made myself clear, we do have one prosecutor devoted to all the accountability courts. And she is working now, she's been doing Superior Court, working into State Court to address it. We see that all the time. Does this person need to be here, or do they need to be somewhere else? Because it's not a crime based on a criminal intent, it's more of a mental health issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have Commissioner Lockett of the 3rd District.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned in your presentation about the youth court. I guess that's a better word for it. Percentage-wise, have you noticed any increase as far as those youth who have been through that court, as far as success, those who have done well as a result of it? Are you giving them another chance?
The pretrial diversion, is that what you're referring to, sir?
The one that you mentioned about with youth.
So it's the youthful nonviolent offenders?
Yes.
If they go through this program, what happens is they do the community service, they get the job, and by the way, many of the places they get the jobs have hired them. We expunge their records. Their records, they do not have a record at that point, because if they're young, they make a stupid mistake, we don't want it to follow them the rest. I would love them never to come back to the criminal justice system. And the people who complete it, their records are expunged, and we check on them, they do not reoffend.
I like that. Thank you very much.
And we've started that, and when I say we, a prosecutor in my office,
Right.
in 2013. And we believe it's been very successful.
It sounds very good.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Holmes of the second.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Heath,
Yes, sir.
you want to talk a little bit more about your body cams
Yes.
that you mentioned?
Yes, sir. What would you
I
like
don't-
to know?
Is there a time frame of when you're supposed to turn over a body cam?
From the police to me?
Yes.
Well, we usually have a policy we've set up. So if you've been arrested and you were in jail, I have 90 days I have to indict that case or you're entitled to a bond.
90 days.
90 days from the date
Okay.
of arrest. But usually what happens, we have worked out a policy with the police departments to get it to us by 45 days because we have to review the file. Sometimes we don't have all the evidence. And when we receive the file, so when, let's say, well, not that you're arrested, but let's say you're arrested, the case comes, I have an administrative employee pulling down those body cams assigned to this case once we get the warrants, and then they have to start reviewing them to make sure. On one murder case, you may have, several hundred hours of body cams that you have to review.
Why is it, are we having so much problem here in Chatham County with people claiming they cannot get to the body cams? If I was an attorney and I'm representing someone
Yes.
and I request for it, is there a time frame that you give it to me? Or?
Yes, I have to do it by law, by a scheduling order, either from the judge or discovery laws. And normally what we have is we have an open case file policy. If you contact me and say, I want to look at the file, I'm like, come on in, you can look at it. And we are moving towards, instead of paper, is to go to, we're working with the public defenders and then roll it out. We're using it at state court. Somebody can go in, they have a password. If you're the attorney, you can download all the information. We upload it and then they download it.
Okay, but I can't remove it out of your office. I have to watch it there in your office?
No, we have thumb drives, we give it to you.
Oh, okay.
We give all the information. Normally now, we give the police report, if there's a crime lab report, a body cam, all of that on a thumb drive.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Odell of the fifth.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You said you worked out a policy with the police department regarding body cam footage?
We have that policy, I know with SPD, and we're working it out with the county police department. Yes, ma'am.
Is it a written policy or it's a practice?
It is a written policy that has been sent before between the chief and I. That was Chief Lumpkin, and it's still in force.
Okay. And what percentage of diversity is in your office currently?
I don't have that number for me. Before I can get that back for you.
Okay. Do you have any DAs that speak Spanish, Korean, or Vietnamese?
Yes, I do. I have 2 prosecutors who speak Spanish.
To speak Spanish. And do you have a diversity plan for recruitment and retention?
We have advertised. We advertised, Diane and a couple of my other prosecutors have gone to different conferences across the United States in terms of recruitment.
And what about retention?
Well, we have not, we don't have a retention problem right now. So, people are here. Forgive me if I'm not understanding.
Okay, so what I'm asking is, if your diversity plan includes recruitment and retention of the staff once they're on board.
Correct.
It doesn't help much if you recruit a person from somewhere else and they're a person of a different ethnicity or whatever, and the office is not welcoming, conducive, encouraging. How do you encourage that you maintain a level of diversity within your office?
Well, when we are looking for employees, obviously, we want diversity and competency. And so when they come in, we do trainings across the board. We have morale functions, whether it's pizza, lunch and learn. We also look for it in terms of the way they can get bonuses, we are by statute with the county and by with the state, that you come in depending on your years of experience. If you came in and I came in and we had the same level of experience, we'd have the same pay. And so hopefully through their exercise of staying with me, they will move up in terms of salary.
Okay, and so within your office, you work in conjunction with HR to have a complaint policy?
Yes, we have all of that. I actually went to an attorney in forgive me, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Hunter McLean, I met with him. He reviewed all my policies. We have policies in effect for whether it's discipline, whether you have complaints of sexual
Is
harassment.
it a progressive discipline policy?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Nope, I know. Yes, you are correct. But we have, we follow similar guidelines as does the county, but we have them written. They are given it to them the first day they come. My office manager instructs them and goes over any questions they may have.
Okay. And you'll get back to me about the diversity in your office currently?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And when you send that back over, will you please note what positions they hold?
Sure. And do you want me to send it to the same email?
Yes, or you can, or to county manager, whichever is most convenient for you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam DA, you
Yes, sir.
started your remarks in reference to my desire to reduce the number of inmates that are currently in the Chatham County Detention Facility. And you suggested that if you had these 3 additional folk, that they would...
Just two, sir.
That you would reduce the inmate count. Now, have you met with the 6 Superior Court judges, and are they on board with you? Because in some cases, the flow is controlled by the judges, and in some cases, they're not. So have you met with them, and are they in agreement with you that they could get these inmates out of the jail system?
They are in agreement with me in terms of an additional employee. If I put 3 in OFD, that these would move the cases along, yes. And I would have to decide how to divide them up. How I assign the cases, I don't assign to which judge they go to, but I can assign it to whatever attorney when the file comes to my office. They would not be opposed, I can state, that we put another person in there because that will expedite. They'll have 3 attorneys in there as prosecutors on the cases.
Okay. The other thing in terms of trying to get folk out of the jail, can you tell me how many times in the previous year that you've gone and asked for a contingency on a case?
I can't tell you that right
and
off
not
the bat.
prepared to try it at the trial date?
No, sir, I can't give you that number. Normally, if we've asked for a continuance, it's because we cannot locate a witness. We've had to ask for a material witness warrant or newly discovered evidence. I mean, there's always, I have to state a case, a reason why I cannot go on a case.
But you would have some idea how many contingencies, you just don't have it on the top of your head. Is
can-
that something you can provide for me?
I'm going to check on that, sir.
The other thing I'd like to know is how many times as DA that you've objected to bail for defendants?
It depends on the crime.
All this has to do with jail head count.
It depends on the crime. I mean, if it's murder, armed robbery, that is only bondable before a superior court judge.
Murder, I would not suggest that you.
It depends on it. Are you talking misdemeanors? If it's a misdemeanor, as to misdemeanors, they are bondable by statute. The sheriff sets them.
I'm really in reference to first-time offenders.
Normally, that's a bond that is set down in recorder's court.
Can you send me something on that as well?
I don't know if I have that information. I don't know if that's trackable, but I will check on it.
Okay. The other thing, you mentioned these specialty courts.
Yes, sir.
And maybe the probate judge can remember, but we didn't create a lot of specialty courts back when I was in the legislature. But when they create a specialty court, do they provide DA support for them?
No, I mean, we have to come up with that. There was an accountability court that was given, a prosecutor was given by the legislature a couple of years ago, but that does not cover, it covers some, like drug court, but it doesn't cover all the courts. We have to adjust internally.
Okay. And I don't remember this either, but can you tell me the formula that's used for staff or positions for assistant DA, state assistant DA throughout the various counties? What, not counties, but judicial circuits. What is the formula for funding, for state funding assistant DA positions?
So
what is it based on? Is it
it's
based on the
based on-
number of Superior Court judges?
Yes, sir, it is.
And if so, how many per judge?
I think it's 1 per judge, Your Honor. And I'd have to check on that. Forgive me. I got to check on that to
And
know.
does it also based on the number of state court judges?
I don't believe state court judges. I think it's only superior court judges.
Can you check on that for me?
Yes.
Now, the other thing is that Can you tell me now the number of assistant DAs that's funded solely by the county?
So, Barbara, you have that form, don't you?
I can help you with it if you don't know
No,
the
we
answer.
have it right
but-
here. So two that are assigned to my office, but they are paid by child support. That is, they're assigned to child support. They are county paid, state reimbursed. And then there are, I believe, you want to know by the county, I keep calling you Honor. Mr. Scott?
That's funded by the county.
No, that's not 42. $29 by the county.
Well, that's close. How many is funded by the state?
10. And I have one grant paid.
Okay. So, in looking at my information here, I show we fund 30 positions. And then I only see 9 that's funded by the state. So when you tell me there's 1 per Superior Court judge and you've got 6 Superior Court judges, that tell me that's not the formula they're using.
And I will check on the formula. Sir, we've got 29 that are paid by the county. We have 1 grant paid. I have 10 paid by the state and 2 paid by child support. And that is separate. Their budget is totally separate in terms of their employee. They are paid by the county but reimbursed by the state through child support.
Now, I asked you about these specialty courts and whether or not they supply DAs to support them, and also the formula and the number, and it has nothing to do with caseload.
No, it does not. Whether you get another Superior Court judge is based on caseload. So I know that Superior Court judges and the state court judges have to submit their numbers to somewhere in Atlanta, and that they make a determination if, based on the caseload, they need more Superior Court judges. But as to the formula, I will check and I can send that back to
The
you.
reason I asked, you were talking about the number of cases you had, and you said 21,000?
That is correct.
That's what you said, 21,000.
Yes.
That seems like a tremendous number of cases for a county this size. And so I was just wondering if the formula include not only just the number of Superior Court judges, but also caseload. And if not, should the formula be changed?
I would say Superior Court needs more judges, yes, as does State Court on average. I have prosecutors have a $500, a 600 count case in State Court.
Well, considering your level of influence with the current chief executive in the state, I would like to ask, would you consider lobbying him to increase the number of state-funded assistant DAs based on not just Superior Court judges, but caseload, as well as Superior Court judges?
If it would get me more people to help me do my job, yes, I would.
Yeah, because I see this as an unfunded mandate. Every time they create a specialty court, they don't send a DA, assistant DA to support that specialty court, then we can't ignore that specialty court because it's a state law. And if we provide you an assistant DA to prosecute in that court, then we've got to provide somebody to defend in that court.
Yes, sir. I don't disagree.
And so if I increase your number of assistant DAs, then I've got to look at not only our public defender's office, because they have both state and local funded position, I also got to look at our indigent defense and how much money we're spending on that, because the law requires me to provide someone to defend the indigent.
And I don't disagree. The only thing I would note is that we handle all cases. So if I'm Joe Blow, I may have the public defender's office. I may retain a personal attorney. Either one of those, we have to handle those. That's only would say the nuance that I have, is that all cases that come through Chatham County have to be processed and prosecuted by my office.
Okay. But I look forward to receiving the requested information from you, and I really appreciate really would appreciate it if you would consider really, and especially, I know you must have contacts since you're now on that commission that really recommend judges to the governor for appointments. I would really think that I would appreciate it if you would really use your influence to lobby for, if you're going to create a specialty court, you ought to have an assistant DA to support that specialty court. You ought to allocate a position and funds for it.
And just to know, they did give us funds for one, but we have DUI court, we have drug court, we have mental health court. So that person, it was for only one accountability court. Savannah is much more forward-thinking in terms of other circuits, that we have multiple courts that work. They did give us one accountability prosecutor, but that's not for all of the courts.
And I would highly recommend that you work with our HR department to look at what you might do on your retention policy. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
For the JU. Madam DA. Yes, sir. Commissioner Jones of the 6th District had a question that, and I didn't see his hand, and before I thank you for presentation. So if you would come back to follow up with Commissioner Jones, I would appreciate it.
It's a quick question. Which
Yes, sir.
accountability court had the assigned person?
It was probably drug court. That was the first court that was created. I can address that in terms of, I'd have to go back and look. That was with Judge Bass, and that was some time ago.
And with that reference, please make sure it goes to Lee so it can come to all of us. And the other piece is, could you please list the accountability courts and I guess what year they were established and some kind of paraphrase of what they actually deemed to be addressed.
Oh, absolutely.
All right,
I'll
thank
have to reach out to the judges who've created those courts.
All right, appreciate it.
And I guess Commissioner Jones' question has triggered another question from Commissioner Odell, so she has an additional question for you.
Just one. I'm curious how you determine that your current need is a staff problem and not a workflow problem. How do
By
you,
the total numbers of 18,000 to 21,000 cases that we are trying to manage.
yeah, but if 21,000, that's like 500 and some odd cases per DA. But you have, they're not all happening, I mean, I understand how it functions.
Right.
But I'm wondering if it is, have you looked at and determined and analyzed your workflow to determine if you can be more efficient in your workflow versus just adding another person? Adding another person is not going to help if you haven't analyzed your workflow. So have you looked at your workflow processes?
Yes, and we can always change it, obviously, try to make it better. Sometimes we are meeting with the judges to try to figure out, you know, EIP was handling cases, they've moved away. We've sat down with the public defender and with the judges to see what is the best way to keep these cases flowing. MCD does a phenomenal job of expediting cases, the Major Crimes Division. When that was created by Judge Cart back in 2013, it was great, but then it created this huge deluge of cases in OFD. And when I say there's 18,000 cases, those are cases that we're disposing of as new ones are coming in. But I agree, we're always looking. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry. Major Crimes Division is MCD that handles designation by the Superior Court judges. OFD is the other felony division. EIP is the early intervention. I have a prosecutor who's available 24/7, responds to the police, does search warrants, or assists with search warrants, preliminary hearings where inmates are in jail.
Have we looked at an outside consultant to look at the workflow, or has it just been an internal process?
Internal. We actually applied for a grant to see about if they could come in and do it, but we were denied the grant to come in and look in flows.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much.
Next, we have the Public Defender's Office, Todd Martin.
Good morning, Chairman Scott and Commissioners. My name is Todd Martin. I'm the acting public defender. I've been in this role for about 3 weeks, and I want to talk to you for just a few minutes about our budget request. I've been listening very carefully to what everyone's been saying for the last
Don't let
hour.
that deter you.
Yeah, I've been paying attention. And so I've been making some decisions on the fly. And I know there had been a budget request that had been made before I've been involved in any of this. And so here's one thing I'm making a decision right now. We'd requested 3 lawyers, forget that. I'm going to hear today, I'm just going to ask for 1. 3 is an unrealistic number based on everything I've been hearing. And so I'm going to cut that down to 1 number and not 3. I'm a public defender. I've been a public defender for 22 years. I know what it's like to be the underdog. I know what it's like to make an argument that's often the losing argument, but I'm here to make it anyway. No matter what I say, I hope you listen to this next number and remember this next number. 377. 377. That number is important. And the reason is the American Bar Association, which is the association that governs all lawyers, all judges, it governs our professionalism, our ethical standards, tells the public defenders and all defense attorneys, you should not represent more than 150 clients. You should not have more than 150 cases, actually. 150 cases. You shouldn't have more than that. Per attorney. We have attorneys in my office right now, I checked yesterday, that have 377 cases. That's 227 more than what the bar says we professionally and ethically should have. That keeps me up at night. That number scares me. These attorneys are really good. They care about their jobs. They worry about it too. They come to me. They ask for help. The other attorneys in the office help them. They have huge numbers too. We'll worry about their numbers later. Their numbers are bad, but they're not as bad. Their numbers are up in the 200s, high 200s. We're just not going to worry about them right now. I'm worried about 377. That's the number I'm worried about. That's dangerous. Innocent people are going to go to jail with 377. We're not going to be able to get to everybody for 377. People are going to sit in jail for a lot longer than they should because we can't get to them as quickly as we should. 377, that should scare you. That's lawsuit scary. It's scary. It's dangerous. The people in my office do their jobs not because they're going to make a lot of money. One of them makes $52,000. He has $100 and something thousand in student loan debt. He's not a public defender because he wants to be a rich lawyer. He does it because he believes in the Constitution. He believes in helping poor people. He's got 377 cases. He works nights and weekends. And he's overwhelmed. The other woman who does it, she's been an attorney for 27, 28 years. But she does this because she believes in it. Luckily, she has that much experience, so she can juggle this as best she can. The other one, he's brand new, but he's young, so he's got youth and energy on his side. So I'm not asking you for 3 lawyers. You know, we'll deal with that in future years. I'm asking you for 1. Even if we got 1, and I could put 1 in that courtroom to help those 2 lawyers, it drops their number down to 250. That's 100 more than what we're being told we should handle. The American Bar Association tells me, as the public defender, as their boss, I'm supposed to be rejecting these cases. I'm supposed to be sending them back and saying, we're not taking them. Sending them back to the state and to the county and saying, nope, we're not doing them. And there was a public defender in Kansas, she did that. You know what happened to her? She got put in jail because she refused to take the cases because there were too many. I mean, I don't want to go to jail, but we're in a crisis situation. And I don't know why it hasn't been explained to y'all. I mean, I don't know why you're being told this now. This has been coming for a long time, but like y'all are being caught flat-footed. Y'all should have been told. And I've had this for 3 weeks, but I'm telling you, we're in a crisis situation. I don't know how to overstate it, but this is where we're at. People's lives, it matters. And the other thing is there are 40% of the people in jail are mentally ill. And so you take someone who's severely mentally ill, that client, you should count that case as 10 cases, 15 cases. That client needs a lot of hand-holding. There's a person in jail right now. Judge Friesen and I talked about him yesterday. She and I had a meeting about all of this. That client's been in jail for 3 years, $70 a day, multiply that out, 3 years. He's mentally ill. He's been Georgia Regional 36 times. So think about that. And it's not because he's been ignored by our office. He hasn't been. We've known about him the whole time. His mental illness is so profound. It's all of us we've met. It's just trying to figure out what to do. It's a very difficult case. But he really requires a team of lawyers who can spend a lot of time just dealing with that case. 377 cases. You don't have time to every day check on Mr. So-and-so. I'm not going to say his name. It's dangerous. I'm sorry we're in one of those years where things have kind of been said and I don't understand what y'all were talking about. I don't understand what millage rate is. I don't. It sounds like a hot potato and I don't really want to get into that. And I don't understand how any of this works. I don't. I've been doing this 3 weeks. But I'm here telling you this is a crisis. It really is. And I was listening to what you were saying, Commissioner Stone, and I was listening to what Chairman Scott was saying, and I was listening to what the county manager was saying about the money. And if we need the money, where do we get the money? And it was scary what y'all are saying, because it sounds like there really isn't the money unless you take it here or there, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But we need it. I need it. And I need it other places too, but this is important. This is real people's lives. Real people are sitting in jail longer than they have to be. And I was listening to D.A. Heap, and I was agreeing to some of the stuff and not agreeing, because that's what she and I do, we argue. And every position she wants and to speed things up, I've got to be able to try to keep up with her. And I can't. I can't keep up. And if I can't keep up, it's not going to move any faster. She's like, we're gonna move people out of jail faster because I'm gonna have a new DA and we're gonna put them in that courtroom. That courtroom she wants to put them in is the 377 courtroom. You know how I know? She and I and Judge Bass have had 2 meetings sitting down about that courtroom. How do we move things faster? She's like, I'm gonna put a new DA in that courtroom. We're gonna move faster. If you don't have another public defender in the courtroom, it's not gonna move any faster. I mean, it's just not. And so she's right. She's got all the cases. Her office does. So she's got more cases to handle. But she's not under the same ethical constraints as defense attorneys are. They don't have the same 150 cases that we do. They don't have somebody's lives, their freedoms in the hands that we do. So, like I said, I've been doing this for 3 weeks. Pulled the numbers yesterday. They scare the hell out of me. So I'm here telling you what I found out, what I've already known. I've had a couple of meetings with Judge Bass. They scare him too. I'll try to answer any questions you got. Thank you.
We had Commissioner Odell, the 5th.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Aside from additional staff, what other resources are you short in? Do you have legal research? Do you have funding? I mean, what are you short in?
Mainly, honestly, it's the lawyers.
It's just staffing.
Right. We're good. We've got great assistants. We've got great investigators. And that's how we're doing as well as we're doing.
And you got June.
We've got June. June's awesome. Yeah, she is. But we're doing okay there. It's just the lawyers to go see the clients, to move the cases, to represent them. That's what we need.
Okay. Thank you.
I have Commissioner Holmes of the 2nd.
Martin, let me get this straight. Your original request was for 3 positions?
Yes, sir.
After sitting in the audience and listening to comments and presenters,
Yes, sir.
you decided to ask for 1.
Yes, sir. I'm a realist.
You're a realist.
Yes, sir.
So you are putting aside your need.
The need, the 377 is so high. It's the one that scares me the most. The next highest number the attorney with the next highest number is 2. Is 291, which is an awful number. And then we have 252, 241, 240, 232. And these are the OFD that Ms. Heap was talking about, other felony divisions. We're not talking about major crimes. We're not talking about murder, rape. We're talking about all the other stuff. In talking to some other people before I came into the meeting today, what I was being told is you're getting nothing. I was taking a calculated risk to try to get something. That's what I was doing, Commissioner Holmes. trying to get something for those 377, because those are the ones that scare me so much.
And did I hear you say 40% of these inmates are mental patients?
Yes, sir. 40% of the people at the jail, those are identified. Those are the ones that we all know have some sort of mental illness. Now, the number I suspect, and we all suspect, is actually higher than that. But 40% are identified as having some sort of mental illness. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Commissioner Jones of the 6th District.
Thank you, Chair. I guess it was mentioned in I guess my briefing to ask about these numbers and stuff like that. But I would like to have a count or breakdown as far as public defenders, as far as the public defender's office is concerned. Something similar to what Meg did as far as her count was concerned.
A breakdown of the number of public defenders?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Total number of public defenders is, I believe, is 19. We have 2 per Superior Court judge, 12. CPD is 13, 3 in juvenile court, 16, 3 in EIP is 19, plus 1 who does appeals. I'm sorry, that's 20.
So you have 20.
20, yes, sir.
Do you have any ties to, I guess, the specialty courts?
Yes, sir. We have 1 person who does mental health court, veterans court, drug court. That person is me. I've been doing it for years. Right now, I'm also doing CPD duties. I also oversee the EIP division as well.
Okay, and of those positions, how many are county funded?
County funded, I believe that would be at least 13 of them.
Okay. All right, that's all I have at this time. If I have anything else, I know I'll contact the manager to contact you. Thank you, sir.
You.
Any further questions? Not, I'll refrain from asking any, but it's my understanding that even with the request for new positions, that you currently don't have all your existing positions filled. And you as acting, I don't want to put you on the spot, but whenever, and I don't want to say too much about your office at this time, but at some point, when we have a permanent public defender, or if the public defender who's on leave comes back, that you really have a recruiting problem and a retention problem.
We certainly have a retention problem. The one position, we have someone who's retiring June 30th, so that'll be a position that's open. That position that'll be open will be the appellate lawyer position. So that'll be the only position that'll be open. And generally speaking, we have about 40 appeals at any given moment.
Yeah. But anyway, I'll share my thoughts on it with our HR manager and the county manager on some of the things I think we could do to attract and retain lawyers. Public defenders is a tough call. I applaud you for the number of years you've dedicated your life to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak and bag.
You're welcome.
Come again.
Next, we have Russell Bridges of the of the Board of Election.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to come here and talk about our budget. Preface this by a little bit. When we did our initial budget review this year, we were not able to complete the budget review And the intent was to have a follow-on review, leading up or prior to this stage. Unfortunately, that second meeting was never materialized due to scheduling among all the various staff members involved. So basically, we're sort of picking up where we left off in March. The budget that we presented is the budget going into the presidential election cycle. As y'all are aware, we really have 4 different budget cycles that we deal with because we have the quadrennial election schedule. Next year's presidential. The year after that's municipal, much smaller. The year after that's gubernatorial. We just lived through that last year. And then the year following is another municipal cycle. So our budget is constantly changing, and we budget based upon what we foresee as the elections that we're going to hold. And last year, the gubernatorial cycle, I believe everybody here probably heard from their constituents. It was the busiest gubernatorial election ever held in the state of Georgia. The candidates galvanized the public. The registration was up. There was probably around a 30,000 voter increase in the rolls in 2018. We saw the effects of that in Pooler. Our office is actively working on expanding the number of voting precincts in Pooler right now. We made a presentation to the Pooler City Council this past Monday. We will be back again on the 1st of July. We're adding 2 voting precincts. When I began with this in 2004, we had 108 voting precincts. Over the course of time with realignment, balancing, we were able to reduce that to 89. Unfortunately, the good side of this is Chatham County is growing. The number of people are increasing, the number of voters are increasing. We're now having to accommodate that growth. Pooler is a clear example. I grew up here. Pooler was a city of 1,500 people when I was young. Pooler's nearing 30,000 people. And this is happening everywhere. So in our budget this year, we initially projected to add 2 voting precincts. My board asked to budget for 4 so that we can handle the contingencies that may arise. And, simply what we've done is budget what we have built over the years, the numbers that it takes to put on an election. It costs us about $100,000 per election to pay the poll workers. That's just one part of it. It costs us $70,000 per election just to move the equipment we have. So the numbers, when you add them up, simply just say that what we asked for is basically what we feel like we need to run the business. In the projection of what was allowed, for example, on poll work, we asked for $494,000. Again, if it's $100,000, just simply $100,000 for 4 elections, that's $400,000. The recommendation was $300,000. In 2016, we had $362,000 that we expended in that same category. The second side of this is, we hear about retention and recruiting. We are constantly recruiting people. We work very hard to retain. Poll workers are people that go put in a really long day. They put up with a lot. They work hard. They're dedicated. And it's hard to keep the good ones time after time. Everybody knows that, the base of poll workers are generally older citizens who have the time to dedicate to it. And unfortunately, time takes a toll on this base. So we're constantly looking to bring new people in. Like everything else, we have to pay a little bit more money here and there, so that adds to the cost of conducting an election. To put one of the numbers in a simple state, we currently have, as of this moment, 90 active precincts. By November, we'll have 92. It costs for a bare minimum poll $1,000 to staff a poll. That's $92,000. Simply stated, the money that we've asked for in poll worker, which is listed as a temporary employee poll worker, is the money it's going to take to staff these polls. We put about 600 people out, and, you know, we have to pay them. The other money, there actually is a component that was listed in our budget. I believe I'm looking at page 6, $515,000. That's a number we've asked for, I believe, belongs in capital improvement. And I think we need to take the steps to put that there. That simply is an expansion that we've been asking for on the building complex so that we can bring our operation on Election Day under one roof. The security of elections has become a paramount issue. The state of Georgia has brought the Department of Homeland Security. We've met with them. We've had our facility has had a security examination. We've partnered very closely with them. And the security of what we do has become, you know, a national issue. And this is not just here, this is every election office. So what we're trying to do, the building is to let us have the operation under a roof where we can watch what's going on and make sure everything is safe and secure. So really the $515,000 item there, if we could put that into the CIP budget for, you know, consideration down the road, then that would help. But simply speaking, the temporary employees, poll workers, we asked for $494. The recommendation was $300. We simply just need the balance of that so that we know that we can pay the poll workers. And what we budgeted for are the elections that we expect to have. A municipal election, November. We expect a runoff in December. We know there's going to be a presidential primary. They announced the date yesterday. It will be March, I think, 24th.
24th, I think.
And then, of course, the general primary. The runoff for the general primary is in July of 2020, so that puts it in the following budget, but the bulk of the preparation work will occur in this budget cycle. So we put some funds in there to cover our office staff that we bring in to work to prepare. The second component is we use seasonal workers as our office staff to prepare the equipment, and we know that the number of weeks of their work will increase to support these elections. So we had asked for $102,000 there. I think $75,000 was granted in that. And we'd asked for an increase of $45,000 in seasonal so we can bring on some additional part-time people to begin some endeavors that we feel are important. One of the most critical is outreach to the public. The public needs to know when we have a complicated ballot like we had last year, they need to know this. We need to be able to reach this, get this in their hands. We can't afford to have people showing up at the poll, seeing a ballot with 18 questions that are written by Harvard lawyers and, you know, difficult to understand. We need to put this in their hands ahead of the time. We need to know that when they get there, they know what they're going to do. They've made their decisions. They walk in, they can cast a ballot, they can move on. Otherwise, you know, we have to hire more people, get more equipment to handle that back-end burden, which is what we're trying to avoid. And the last component here, we're dealing with a number of unknowns this year, so we've budgeted based on knowns. The state is currently looking at a new voting system. We do not know the impact that's going to have on us from staffing, but we do know that when we get into the fall, when the new system is finally chosen and is being fielded, we're going to have to double our efforts because we have to first get it, we have to learn how to use it, we have to help train the public, and then we have to be prepared on March 24th to put it to work. So anyway, I'm just asking for consideration in the areas of temporary workers, temporary poll workers, to have those funds restored and to move forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Question.
We got, Commissioner Lockett of the 3rd.
In moving your equipment around on the day of election or during a per election, you're talking about what, $70,000?
Yes, sir. We have a contract that we work through purchasing, and we bid it out every 5 years. And we pay $180 per voting locations to move the equipment out and to bring the equipment back.
How successful has that been?
It's been extremely successful. For however it falls, we've had the same contractor for a number of years, and every time we bid it, most of the time the prospective additional contractors are 50%, 75% higher on a per unit basis.
Commissioner Jones of the 6th.
Thank you, Chair. You spoke of $1,000 per polling place.
Yeah, an
And that
approximation.
equates to about $92,000.
That
I
is
guess.
if I put 4 people at every location.
Correct. With that being stated, what is the matrix as far as determining what a polling place or where a polling place should be determined to see if we actually need 90, 70, 60? Because if, in essence, we needed 70 versus 90, that would reduce the amount by $20,000, for example. What is a matrix set to determine what a polling place or where it should be at, located-wise?
Well, polling places, the intent and
How do we determine it?
What we try to do is to make sure that we have polling places first geographically located near the citizens. This is what the current state law calls for. A voting precinct is a community of interest, people who vote on the same representatives. So people who live in an area such as Southbridge, for example, all have the same county commissioner, the same state rep, same state senator. That's a community of interest. You look at this collection and you draw a boundary around it, how many people are there? We generally try to target for around 3,000 people in a voting location, because remember, these people have to cross through that building and be handled on a given day. Mm-hmm. We put about, with the current equipment we have, we use between 300, 350 people per machine to handle the flow through the poll, and we generally have staffing commensurate to the amount of equipment we have. The equipment we have today weighs 50 pounds apiece. If we have 8 or 9 machines on a poll, these people have to move this equipment, set it up, get it operational. They have an hour in the morning before the poll opens to prepare the facility. They're open for 12 hours. Then they expediently have to close this thing down, tally up, balance, prepare their paperwork, and transport the election results in. So if you look by and large across the county, most of our polls fall in the 2,500 to 3,500 range. In Pooler, last year, 2 of the polls
like
in Pooler
6,000.
went over 6,000 people.
Correct.
The buildings and facilities and the parking just were not simply there to support it. We have another polling site that's around 6,000. It can handle it. It's a huge facility, has several hundred parking places, plenty of places for a voter queue, room for equipment. So if we have a facility that's in the right location and everything works well, we can handle a larger number. But buildings for polling places are not easy to come by. I mean, we're probably 60% of our polls are in churches. They have fellowship halls. They're generally not in business on Tuesday. And they provide this as a civic service. We compensate them for expenses of being on site. We don't rent. If we rented, we'd be talking about a lot more money. But we generally try to balance the physical location to the voters and to make sure that we don't have what we had last year in Pooler with lines of people standing 2 or 3 hours. This is why we're adding. You start taking away polls, you have to be really careful.
I'm not
Well, I mean, I'm trying to answer the question on the other side. The polls that have been there, we have some smaller polls, but in our consolidations over the years, we consolidated the really small polls into nearby polls. And we considered location, we considered the facilities, the distance to the voters, and all the demographics to go into it. But unless something changes about how the throughput of a pole and how people can park and get in and do these things, it's difficult to reduce the number from where we are. I mean, if we're adding, it's because we see a need.
And I'm not asking for a subtraction of poles, but.
Right.
And I don't actually per se have it. I monitor, I keep an eye on the aid
Right.
in my district and kind of make sure that it's done well. But I have observed throughout the county, there are some precincts that actually had lower amount numbers
Sure.
and less machines. And since we're talking about $1,000 per pole, I would, and with the amount of extra people that actually wanted to participate in the election,
Right.
that did not participate in the election, and I can speak, Pooler had big numbers too, but there were other areas that had huge numbers.
Sure.
May not in the 4,000 or 6,000 range, but they were bigger numbers than the machines that were available. And so I want to make sure that, we have some kind of matrix in mind. You also have two other means of being able to vote as well.
Right.
But I want to make sure that we have some kind of formula and system or some form, because if we're spending $1,000 per poll,
Right.
we want to get the greatest investment of that $1,000 per poll. We want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to be able to vote in Chatham County if they're a registered voter. And so if you understand what I mean by that,
Absolutely.
that's
I
why I'm
concur with you.
asking,
Yes, sir.
what is the matrix as far as that's concerned?
Well, again, the matrix is, the community of interest judges, where we look to create. And then as they grow, we look at the facilities that we're in to determine the capacity of the facilities. And if we have lines in areas, then we look at that. We do have some smaller polls, more in the city. And a lot of this comes about from when redistricting occurs and commission lines and House lines and Senate lines change, you wind up with smaller communities of interest, and you wind up with some smaller polls. We typically look at those. If we get down in the 200 to 300 voter range, we tend to look to see if there's an option for combining
what I'm
that into another location. We've done that. When I said earlier, we had 108 when I started. We were down to 89 at one point. We took polls that had 115 and 120 voters and 200 voters, and we moved, consolidated. We had a poll that had 200 people in it, was a phenomenal facility. Right down the street, you had a poll with 750 people in it. It wasn't ADA compliant. So we looked at all of those things, and we said, these two are physically close enough, they're compatible enough with one another, and we bring those together. And we monitor this constantly. So we don't have that many small ones anymore that are in the below 400 range. I think we have a couple that are in the 400 range.
Don't have any under 400, but you do have some under 1,000.
But we do have several under 1,000, but not that many. And we constantly are looking. We would be looking, when redistricting occurs after the census, which is upcoming, that's generally when, if you're going to start making changes in boundaries and combinations, that's really the time to do it, because that's when the community of interest changes. Part of the change in Pooler is dictated on the division in the county commission lines. It was a natural change. In the 2010 census, the 8th County Commission District was put in above Pooler, the Pooler-Savannah area.
Yes, sir.
And so we use that as a decision point to define a new community of interest, to split a poll that has 6,500 people into two polls of roughly 3,200.
Right, and I heard you mention the number 3,000, and doing the math on 3,000 over the course of 12 hours, that's about 250 people per hour on the poll. And I'm glad to hear that you said you wanted to put some money in as far as advertising to get that information out, because a lot of people complained in reference to the number of things they were putting on the ballot and not being able to understand that piece right there. So I would hope that we would not just take that effort as saying that we want to put more into advertising to inform people, but try to make sure we put that in the budget in future years as well. Because
Right.
I think the more we advertise and we inform our people, and you have 250 people on average based on that 3,000 per poll that you spoke of.
Right.
If we got 19 things on the poll, that 250 may not be occurred. So I think the more advertising we get out there to inform these people, the faster the rate of attainment with that 250 on that hour per rate would be helpful.
But
And,
you're
I'm
correct.
in it at that, sir.
Well, the ballot we had in November was the largest part of the problem. We had, a high turnout, but we had a ballot that was very complicated, and that ballot slowed the voting down. We had poll managers calling and saying they had people standing at a voting machine for 20 to 25 minutes, where normally most people vote in 2 to 3 minutes.
Correct.
So, when you slow it down like that, you can throw everything you have at it, and you're still not going to solve the problem. So the best thing here is, how can we better service the public? Can we reach out to the public when we have these? Can we make sure you get community involvement, get, organizations that the commissioners and the aldermen and the various other elected officials are in, to push down through this mechanism to reach the end voter? What we would like is every voter to walk in a poll on election day with something that they pulled and marked. They've made their choices.
Understood.
They've sat down at the table, they've studied it, they understand, they walk in the poll, they check in, they get their access, they go to the machine.
And I don't want you to think that I think there's just a matrix or a formula out there. I think each precinct, each area has a different matrix and formula, because you might have more absentee ballot here versus actual voting in person. So
Right.
I just want to make sure I put that note, because this is a recorded conversation, just to make sure that it's understood, that I just want more fairness and more opportunity for those people to be able to vote in our community. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Holmes is a second.
Mr. Burgess, how long you been with us in your position?
15 years, sir.
15. Would you say you probably the senior in your position in the state of Georgia?
No, sir. When we go to training every year, I have the honor of being in company of people who've been doing this for 30, 35 years.
So you're a baby.
I'm a baby.
Good. Let me ask you a couple of questions. I heard you mention all over about voting problems and issues, and you state that we are no different than them. Can we become more proactive?
That's what we're trying to do, sir.
And I've heard you comment about it, but it bothers me to hear that someone got caught off base with the growth of Pooler, when everybody in Chatham County know Pooler was growing. So if I was traveling in Pooler in my car, I would program myself to go when I want to go, how I'm going to do it. You being in your position, how did Pooler caught you off guard with what happened out there last election?
We've been watching Pooler's growth and monitoring. What happened was, last year, there was a surge in registration on top of the increased growth, and then the turnout was high. We fell 9,000 votes short in 2018 gubernatorial election of the turnout in the 2016 presidential election.
Okay.
The difference, though, in 2016, we had an 80% turnout. In 2018, we had a 55% turnout.
Okay.
So there was a very late surge in registration statewide that basically did not show up in our planning until the very last minute. When we had this election built, the equipment built, things distributed, we suddenly saw the last minute. So, we knew that the election was going to be busy. We just didn't know it was going to be that busy.
Okay.
And the ballot proved to be a detriment to the throughput of the polling places. And I think, I dare say, in the places where probably the greatest brunt of the additional registration would have been like Pooler and those areas, people who at the last minute said, I'm going to vote in this election. Well, that swells the numbers. That's kind of how it escaped us. We knew Pooler's growing. We've been looking at Pooler and expanding in Pooler for a while, and we had this year as our target.
Okay.
We kind of, now last year it would have been nice to have these 2 new polls in place to help spread that voter load out a little bit.
And one more thing I want to call our attention to. I know we're going to get some new machine. You talked about it a while ago.
Yes, sir.
Don't let us get caught with citizen complaining that they didn't get the training, they didn't get the attention, they didn't have time. I think we're in the front of it now because we're talking about it. but we need to put a plan of action in place where we can get out to every community and educate our citizen how to use that machine.
Well, we agree with you 100%. The part that concerns us in the education of the community, and I can disclose, the state in their bid process requires the vendor of choice, whoever they select,
Correct.
will be training the election officials in the state. So whatever company wins the bid is going to have to staff up and come to the 159 counties, train us.
Okay.
The state is undertaking an endeavor to build training teams to fan out in the state and to do public demonstration, public exhibition, public training. We intend to do that also. The problem we have in planning this is we don't have the equipment. It has not been selected.
Exactly.
So the starting date continues to move out and getting closer to the date when we have to actually put this in service. So we intend to, on our local level, within the means that we have, depending upon where this happens, we're going to do what we can to educate the public. And this is part of this outreach we're talking about.
Okay.
We want to be able to, get a team of 3 or 4 people and go to some community meetings. We can't go to the 55 or 60 community centers in a county. We simply don't have the resources to do it. But if we can plan some things to where some of those can come together, then we can reach out.
Okay.
But it's going to be an all court, full court press on this one.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Odell of the 5th.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I've had several complaints in the 5th about voting places moved or signs not visible. Before the next election, can we put on the county channel where everybody needs to go per district?
Well, actually, we have that information currently, it's out on our website. What we can do is to promote where they can go. There are services, we have tools voters can use to get a sample ballot to verify where they vote. And they can do this on their smartphone, they can do this on their home computer. We work with the media, and again, we know the media only has a certain amount of penetration in the community. So we try to work within the media, and we work through the PIO's office to push this information out. What we're looking to do is to spread out through social media and other avenues to reach the audience in a better fashion. We have the tools. If I can tell you where the tools are, then you can get the answers to your question, and you can do it. Now, you're in the car, you're on the way, I need to confirm it. You can key it in on your phone,
Okay.
While you're parked, not while you're driving.
Because we had a lot of calls and redirecting people or trying to tell them in the 5th where they were supposed to be.
Well,
So
in
if we
actuality-
could work with, if we could do something to promote it and start promoting it earlier than we normally do so more people can get it, that would be.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Not. Mr. Bridges, I have a series of questions that requires a series of short answers.
Yes, sir.
First, what do we pay the poll workers currently?
We pay our poll managers, we have 2 classes of poll managers. The normal poll managers pay $240 for the day, and what we call a large poll manager, and that's any poll that's over 2,500 voters, we pay them $255. We pay $40 for the training that they attend. And they're required to take about a 3.5-hour training course for each major election cycle.
And what do you pay the poll worker?
We pay the assistant managers $200, and we pay the clerks $140. And they all get the same training.
Second question, are you having problems recruiting people?
Constantly. Yes, sir. Retention is the biggest problem, and getting new people in to fill those voids is a continuing issue.
Okay. Next, you mentioned municipal elections. Are the municipalities responsible for paying for those elections?
We bill the municipalities for the elections, and they pay us back. But that's not a budget offset, that's a revenue.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. And then this upcoming election cycle in 2019, how many municipalities will we have voting?
There's 6 municipalities having elections this fall, and the county's having an election.
Yeah. So of the 6, all but 2,
That's correct.
and what 2 are not having elections?
Bloomingdale and Thunderbolt.
Okay. I just wanted that out for the public. Everybody is voting except for Bloomingdale and Thunderbolt. Now, the other question, and there was a lot of talk about the length and time it took to vote in the last election, and part of it was simply the confusion of the ballot.
Yes, sir.
And we hear that we ought to do more to advertise it and all that. I consider that an unfunded mandate by the state legislature. All those constitutional amendments was very confusing, and none of them was actually needed. That's the other confusion part of it.
Right.
And the public didn't understand that. They could have simply voted no on all of them, and everything would have been fine, and government would have continued to function. And there was people who were trying to put something in the Constitution that was already codified or could have been codified at the state legislature level and should not have been included in the Constitution in the first place. And so the public needs to understand that. The other thing is that the state, if you're going to put that many amendments on the ballot, they ought to provide funds, or they ought to do advertising and educate the public, since it's their constitutional amendments, and it really has nothing to do with county government. And when you don't do that at the state level, you're simply passing on the financial burden to the counties, and that's another unfunded mandate. But that's just a statement. But the last thing that I learned, and watching these elections, that the Secretary of State, to some extent, bears some blame, because how far in advance do you have to give him your plan of action? How many machines you're going to deploy, how many poll workers, and everything else?
We actually do not have to give the state any measure.
How many days?
We don't have to give the state the plan of action.
You don't?
No, sir. That
Well,
is developed
then
locally.
in the last election, when I suggested that we deploy more equipment to certain precincts, I was told we couldn't, because we've already given the Secretary of State our plan, and we couldn't add equipment.
Did you hear that from me?
I'm hearing it from, I heard it from your boss.
Okay. Well, let's call it a communication gap. We do not tell the state what we're doing. The state places the responsibility of servicing the public directly on our shoulders.
Okay.
Well, we do develop a plan in advance, and we do prepare equipment in advance.
And you don't submit that plan to the state?
No, sir, we do not submit it to the state.
Okay.
Obviously, the state holds us accountable. When it doesn't go as well, I get to go see the state election board and explain why it didn't work as well as it should.
And the reason I ask that, because there are times at the last minute if we see a surge, and this is going to impact the number of equipment, we ought to have equipment that if, adequate equipment, that if something goes down, or if we decide in midstream, if we have sufficient workers, and you ought to have more workers than actually deployed, because if somebody gets sick at the poll place and decides to leave, that slows everything down. And you don't have a contingency plan to replace that person, that slows stuff down. But we ought to buy enough equipment for this next election, for this next cycle with the new equipment, that we can actually have adequate backup, not only in case of equipment failure, but in case we decided the day before, 2 days before, that we want to deploy more equipment, and if we can find the personnel that's trained to staff this, that we ought to have enough equipment to be able to fulfill that. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with you. There are some limitations with the current equipment in that you can't add anything on election day if it was not prepared at least 72 hours ahead of the election for that purpose.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to prepare additional equipment for a given voting precinct because the machines are actually programmed for a specific location.
Yeah.
If you prepare it and leave it on the shelf as a backup.
Well, you have to program them for a specific location because you have different district representatives, different county commissioners and.
That is correct.
Per district, so they have to be prepared per district.
Per a given
But
point.
you can't always tell where there's equipment failure, but you can almost tell where the backup's going to be.
Right, well, we have about 30 machines that we have in a three-layer backup. We actually have our field staff that's on the street during the day in support carries spare equipment that has been tested and certified to be used. It's just not programmed for a location.
Yeah.
So if a machine fails in a given location, our field staff actually goes to that location. If they cannot bring that machine back into service, they swap it. So we do maintain field spares, and there's 11 of those that are on the street during the day. And on the shelf, we have another 20 pieces of equipment that we've also certified to back that up. So we maintain backup equipment for equipment failure. It's just simply a limitation of the DRE system is I can't run in there and program 3 or 4 machines and send them to a location because that is against the state statute. The new equipment that's coming out may alleviate that, and I'm going to use the word may here. The new equipment, the ballot marking devices that are the planned purchase are simply devices that give the voter a way to mark a ballot. They're not tabulating devices, and that's the key difference. A DRE machine is a tabulator. In other words, when you go on it and you mark your ballot, it counts that you've cast a ballot, but it's also recording your votes. So at the end of the day, we produce a report from that machine, and it says we cast this many ballots and these many votes on it. Then those are collected and consolidated in our office, and that generates the election results. The ballot marking device simply has the ballot. So if a ballot marking device breaks, take it out, you put another one in. And supposedly, if we had a situation where we had a higher turnout and the throughput was below the expectation, we simply might be able to add. So my hope with the new system that's forthcoming is that we will be able to do exactly what you just said. We see a delay going over here, we can simply pull something off the shelf and run over.
But you're going to have more opportunity for things to go wrong because you're going to have not only a device to vote on, you're going to have a scanner
Right,
and a printer.
that's correct.
And so there'll be opportunities, and what the county needs to be prepared for, it's going to be more costly going forward to run elections on a continuous basis for whatever the duration of these machines, because you're going to have the paper cost, ink cost, and scanner replacement or maintenance. So it's going to be an increased cost to operate elections going forward.
Well, there is a component to what you just said.
Regardless, with the new machines being proposed.
With the new system, because it's a paper-based system,
Yeah,
state law requires that we retain any ballot that's acted upon for 2 years post-election. The ballots that we retain today are the provisional ballots and the absentee ballots that are voted or spoiled. When we have the new paper-based system, we will have to keep the ballots that are cast by the voters in each
oh
voting
yeah,
location.
you're going to have to keep them in some kind of secure location
That
that
is
limited,
correct, for 2
limited or
years.
no access.
So to put it in numbers, last year we had 10,000 absentee ballots in the November election. Those are in the archive being stored by administrative services. If we were in a paper-based system at that time, we'd have 110,000 more pieces of paper to go with it. So we're going to have a lot more paper to store for that period of time because that paper is the official trail.
Yeah. I'm saying that for staff benefit. You might as well just gear up because it's going to be a lot more expensive to operate. That's just a fact of life. And I appreciate your service, and we'll make sure that you have adequate funds to run the election in an efficient manner.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Jones of the sixth.
I just
Commissioner
want to
Holmes of the second. I've generated more interest. I should
Appreciate it.
have stopped.
appreciate it, Chair. I did want to notate, yes, we are not having elections in Bloomingdale and Thunderbolt. However, we are having county participated items going in those cities, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
So
well,
I
that's
just
what
want
I
to make for the
mentioned.
public to know.
Right.
It was stated that
If
we're
this
not having
commission,
election in
if
those
this
cities.
commission votes to put SPLOST on the ballot, which I think it will, all municipalities will be activated. I just wanted to note that the majority was going to be activated regardless.
Yes, sir. I just want to make sure it was,
Yeah.
Right.
we had
It's
some
just-
clarity in that, because I didn't want nobody from Bloomingdale or Thunderbolt not coming if we did have that countywide vote.
They're just not having
All
a
right. The
municipal
other-
election at this time.
The other piece, and I understood it wasn't no municipal, the other piece was the machines. So we're stating that the decision was made by the Board of Elections and not the state to incorporate or put machines out there into the community, additional machines, because as I saw it, because I voted early, I always vote early, the forecasting projected the fact that we were gonna have more people vote in that election. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
I don't think the forecast really indicated, because
Well, it
when-
did.
when we looked at-
That's a hearsay.
when we looked at the number of people who were early voted, it was what I consider a very marginal increase, if any increase at all, and it really wasn't, and keep in mind now, what was
I
said.
can pull the numbers.
55% of the folk voted in this last election versus 80% in the presidential election.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are more registered voters now, so that 55%
So you won't see the
represent a
numbers.
lot more people.
Correct.
Right.
But it really wasn't, it wasn't as many people who voted in 2016, you didn't have the problem. The problem is the confusion of the ballot.
Right. The ballot slowed it
I'm
down.
not gonna give all confusion to the ballot as far as the problem. I know part of that was the problem.
You can't put 18 amendments on there with no explanation and people not reading them in advance, and where it
I
usually
agree
takes
with
you 2 to 5 minutes to vote, it's now taking you
20 minutes to
12 to 23 minutes.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. However, even that, it stretched the lines thin. And we knew that, even with what you just said, we knew that it was gonna be a harder read, because it was gonna go from a 2 to 3 minute threshold to a 12 to 23 minute threshold, whatever time frame you said. We
yeah.
knew that was gonna be the threshold problem. So we could have made some kind of adjustment
We wouldn't
at the
have-
actual election, but
they
that's
would-
a whole nother conversation for
There
them.
wouldn't have been enough equipment to get the elections to a 5-minute vote
I'm not
range.
disputing that, but we should have addressed it better. And so that's a conversation me and you can have off.
No, you can't have it off post, because you don't have the equipment, you don't have the people, or anything else to suggest that you can have a ballot like that and reduce the voting time to 3 to 5 minutes.
So I
Do you
know
agree with
can't-
that?
Okay,
Yes,
you
sir.
can't reduce the voting
No,
time,
I'm
however.
not, my question was not to you. Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I
All right,
mean,
just
that's the
in-
posture we've taken, is that the ballot proved to be more complicated. And if we had put every piece of equipment we had out last year, we still would have had the problem.
How many pieces of equipment were left in storage
There were about
behind that?
65 machines on the shelf.
Okay, so if those 65 machines would have been put out, because we had the increase, we knew we had the issue as far as being able, the ballot from a 2 to 3 minute time to 13 to 23 minute time was going to be a problem, then we would have got more votes that would have been into the system. We had 65 pieces of equipment that were not used. And you can't tell me that we couldn't have gotten an increase in vote if we'd have put those 65 pieces of equipment out there.
Commissioner Holmes.
All right,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Mr. Burgess, I hope this is the last question.
Sir.
Okay. I heard you respond to the chairman question about the voting machine, if it's broken down. You said the field worker go in and swap it out.
Yes, sir.
When you say swap it out, that machine remain in place, or it leave that location?
We normally, if a machine fails, we leave it on site.
You leave it on site?
And we just, because the technicians carry, that we prepare equipment for backup. So
It's
we
out
actually,
of, it's out
we
of
test
order.
it.
It's out of order when you leave it and you shut it down.
We seal it, we close it, we put a
So
tag
the-
on it, says it's failed.
And the numbers come up there and goes where?
Well, what happens on a touchscreen machine, the DRE, the media that's stored in the machine has, there are 3 points of record. And 2 of them are internal to the machine, and 1 of them is on a removable media. So if a machine fails during the day, we remove that media and put it in a replacement machine. It reads all that in, and it assumes the votes that were cast on the preceding machine.
Okay.
At the end of the day, we have 1 media that has the record, and we have, the machine has a backup record.
Do that record, when you shut it down, where that record go at? Do it go to the manager of that poll?
Well, The ones that are internal to the machine stay in the machine.
Stay in the machine.
The removable media is removed by the manager at the end of the night as part of the closing
And
process.
where that go at?
And that's brought to our collection center. And we have a collection center, and this is where the building I was talking about comes in. We want to bring that home, rather, it's off-site right now.
Okay.
But we have a collection center where it's accounted. They bring it in, we make sure they brought everything in, because this is how we calculate and tabulate. And then that's brought into our office, and we have a team of people who are processing those results, incorporating those into our tabulation system, and that's what generates the results that you see on the cable channel, you know, and everywhere else.
Okay.
All right.
It's clear enough. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
The juvenile court judge is bowed out. I think he thinks he's perfected his argument with the staff. I have nobody else on the list unless you have anybody else, Mr. Manager? So if not, I consider this closed.